Hello, everyone. Welcome to our soul session this Saturday. Hope you're doing well. How are you, Rob?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. I'm so excited about this topic. It's one of our favorite topics. It is the eternal boy and romantic relationships.
That's the story of my life.
Story of your life, and then the story of all the men I dated before I met you. So I think it's really appropriate to talk about our experience as you being an eternal boy at one point and me being the one who dated the eternal boy, and how they show up in mythology, how it shows up in pop culture, how it shows up in our life, and why are we attracted? Why are women attracted to the eternal boy? Or why do they feel like they're stuck with an eternal boy in their relationship life? And then why men have a hard time breaking free of that dynamic in themselves.
Yeah. And before we get into all that, I just want to say we're not pathologizing human behavior. As coaches, we like to talk about these things as part of our nature. It's part of the beauty and complexity of being a human being, especially in relationships. It gets really interesting. But these are important aspects of human relationships that very few people talk about or understand. So we want to bring them into the open because relationships are difficult. They are complex and complicated.
It's not as easy as just meeting the right person.
That's right.
And then everything's just going to fall into place, and everyone should assume how to behave and how to treat each other and what to expect, and there's all these rules that people should follow, and you're inviting another human being into your world. They have their own past experience that they've been conditioned, and so do you. So your stuff kind of interacts with each other, and in a way that's good, because that's how we grow. That's a lot of times we can't see things that we need to, that are unconscious in ourselves, until we get into that intimate relationship.
But we ask you to resist the labeling another person or a human being with these labels, these ideas, and just thinking of them as purely those things. We hear a lot of people talk about narcissism and kind of labeling their exes or other people as narcissists. That's not really a good way to think about other human beings.
Because they can't really be anything besides that if you project that label onto them. And there's something deeper to everyone, even if they can be destructive or mean or whatever happens in a relationship. We have to see that there is a human being underneath all that.
Absolutely.
And a lot of what we experience in relationships that break our hearts are people that are not broken, but that are like hurt themselves, and they don't know how to treat another person because they don't know how to treat themselves. And so we have to have compassion, not tolerate bad behavior, but we have to have compassion for the human condition. Like, we all didn't have perfect parents.
We've all come short of the kingdom of heaven. Right?
Yes. And by the yardstick we measure others, we measure ourselves. And that's what this isn't about, making fun of the eternal boy, but about recognizing what their challenges are and why that dynamic shows up in relationships and in men.
Well, we talked about the Puer Aeternus, which is the eternal girl. So now we're talking about the eternal boy. And keep in mind, we all have aspects of these, we have these traits and qualities, just to different degrees and at different stages of our development.
So for a woman, it's the Puer Aeternus, which is the eternal girl, and the Puer Aeternus is the eternal boy.
The eternal boy, and we'll just refer to it as the eternal boy,
just to make it easy. We're not speaking Latin the whole time. So when we think about the eternal boy, this was Jung actually brought this into the world of psychology, this type of something that shows up in men that there's something going on where they're not growing up. They haven't transitioned from being their mother's son to being an adult male. Psychologically. Now, physically, yes, that happened. And a lot of times, if you look at ancient history and indigenous tribes, they had a ritual for men to go become a boy. You had to go become a man. They would steal the baby from the mother's tent.
The
adolescent from the mother's tent. And they would take, the elders would take him out and have some kind of ritual for him to become a man. There were other, very different variations of that. And in modern culture, we don't have that ritual. So what did he see as that eternal boy? How would he define it?
Yeah. So if we think about the trajectory of becoming a man, as well as a woman, but here we're specifically talking about the male journey. Definitely, we grow up as children being dependent on our parents, and especially our mothers. But there comes a time when we reach puberty, adolescence, where we're meant to break away from the mother, to strike out on our own, to individuate, essentially, to become our own individual self. And that process is a psychological process that is meant to take place naturally.
Like you go away to college, or you start your first job, and you start to make your own money, and you start to have responsibilities that are your own.
That's right.
Versus mommy's taking care of everything for you.
Yeah. And we can say those are the external signs of somebody individuating, becoming their own man. But psychologically, what Jung was saying is that there's a tendency for some men to want to remain as children or as adolescents, being dependent on the mother archetype. Now, not the physical mother always, but the mother archetype, meaning they want to be enveloped. They want to be unconscious. They don't want to think for themselves, act for themselves, act in the world.
So it could be a woman that becomes that mother role in their life.
No, in relationships, that would be part of it, that they might be looking for a woman who substitutes the mother and becomes, in essence, emotionally their mother, or their connection to the mother.
So it's as if the stage that every man goes through as an adolescent is that stage of right before that stage, he really is raised by the mother. She does everything for him. He looks to her for guidance and support, and to be there for him when he needs her. And then there is a stage where he has to start, basically break away. And so this is saying psychologically, he hasn't made that step yet in some aspects of his life. He could have his own business. He could be successful on the outer, but psychologically, he hasn't really grown up to be the adult from the mother, or from that kind of grown up way. Kind of like would a playboy be someone like that? Kind of like a playboy who's just kind of doesn't have responsibility. Maybe someone who's non-committal.
Yes, but you could also have somebody that's married and has children and has taken on all the appearance of a responsible male, adult male, but internally, emotionally, they could still be the eternal boy.
And so what does that look like emotionally for a man?
Well, if you think about really taking responsibility for yourself, it means that you feel confident to survive on your own, first of all, but not only survive, but to define yourself on your own terms, instead of with that defining yourself by the attachment to the family, to the mother, to your past.
So it would be like kind of a man who's like kind of dominated by the wife, what is that guy? The guy that's like, yes, dear, and kind of like she's.
Yeah.
I've heard actually Tony Wolff talks about the mother, and a lot of men say the mothers will say, I have five children, and actually six, including my husband. That kind of like role where the husband's not really leading in the family, where he's just kind of another child, another mouth to feed, another person to support.
Very much so. Yeah, exactly. And we see that, von Franz, who wrote more about the Puer Aeternus, saying that there's in the culture, in modern culture, there's an epidemic of this eternal boy syndrome, the Peter Pan syndrome, and all these ideas of.
Well, youth is idolized now in our culture versus the wise man is not idolized anymore.
Yeah, and we all grow up kind of thinking that freedom and happiness is this kind of doing whatever we want to do without taking responsibility.
Kind of like a fun, the kind of like don't commit to something too long. Even I guess like 50 years ago, it was honorable to be in a job for 25 years and work at the same company, the same factory. And, you're just kind of a company man. And now it's that flighty, like freedom and bouncing around and creative, where there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, if it's expressed externally and psychologically, you're still not taking it's really, you're using it to avoid responsibility. I would think that a clear definition of the eternal boy is a man who's not willing to take responsibility for his life, that he's dependent on a woman, whether it's his mother or his woman, to take care of him, basically. Like, you're in charge of, me.
Right. So if we think in stereotypes, and this is, purely for kind of clarification of what the type is. If you think of somebody remaining at home, living in the parents' basement, kind of playing video games,
smoking pot all day.
Yes, being close to 40 and still kind of doing these things, not really being able to step out into life. Now, psychologically, what that means is that they're betraying life itself. Because life is giving you this opportunity, and your job as a human being is to make the most of it. That's the only job it gives you. Make the most of what I give you.
So the masculine energy of the will, just self-directed will, is not there. It's more of a feminine, even receptive, kind of childlike. And even entitlement that the world is supposed to take care of me. I don't have to take responsibility for anything.
That's right.
Or the person who complains about life. We've all had those dates where the guy's like, no one, nothing works out for me. And, that kind of woe is me. And they don't have that sense of, well, I'm responsible. I'm going to make it happen. It's more that kind of whining. And even actually, I think a lot of those men that do that, those dominating the player, what do they call the men against women, that are like angry about women. I think a lot of them they haven't grown up yet, and they're blaming women for their lack of, women are taking over my life. And, what do they call the seduction guys? And it's that kind of almost, it can show up in that way where they're just feeling like a victim to a woman. And like when I was single, I would date some boys, the eternal boys. And it was almost like if you didn't like them, they would have like a little temper tantrum. And like if you didn't give them what they wanted, another date or call them back, and they're like whiny and kind of like immature. There's like an immaturity about it.
Yeah.
Not honoring. And then other people where you say you're not interested, and they're like, okay, well, thank you very much. It was great to meet you. But then you get the kind of whiny boys that have like a little tantrum, and you feel like, oh, I dodged a bullet there. And I think women, especially now, I think women's roles have changed too, because women have taken a lot of initiative. There's a lot of more opportunities for women, and they end up becoming a force in the world where they weren't before. And I think for some men, it's a way for them to drop the responsibility because the women are taking over? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah,
just in generally in a culture, not in every situation. But.
Yeah, I think there was an old SNL skit where the guy was actually tied to
the mother.
Still had the umbilical cord tied to.
I never saw that
to
one.
the mother. Yeah, it's an old one, but it's that idea that the person never was able to break away from their mother.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's what was typically called the mother complex. Now, this is not to blame the mother, because essentially it's not really the physical mother that creates this. Although, of course, that dynamic plays in. Jung says it's the archetype of the mother. It's the internal mental representation that the man has of the mother that is, in a sense, kind of holding them back, holding them hostage.
Tell me more about that. They're born into with the archetype. We have all the archetypes in us. And so when they're born, the mother basically awakens the mother archetype in the son. And then he projects all these, basically the divinity of that beautiful archetype onto the mother. And there's that kind of bond. That's what creates the bond with the father. And then those, whatever that is, all that mother needs to, he doesn't realize that it's coming from inside of him. It's a projection.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So if you think of this powerful mother archetype, which we see in religious iconography, right? The Virgin Mary, the beautiful Mother of God, kind of Sophia, wisdom. But you also see the opposite. And some traditions, you have Kali, the destroyer, right? The mother who is not only able to create life, but also take it away, snuff it out, crush it. And in mythology, you also see the witch, which is a kind of mother figure, but in the dark shadow elements.
The cold refrigerator mom. Remember when autism was first labeled as a disorder, they were saying that initially they said it was because of the refrigerator mom. That's why the kids were that way, but then they realized that wasn't the case. But that's kind of this idea that refrigerator mom or the cold abandoned mom. And a lot of times, if we think about just our patterns in life, our mother, if you're looking to that mother archetype to be this certain idea that this is the world, this is the person that's going to keep me safe and support me. And that mother's depressed, or that mother is working and not there all the time. There's also a lot of times people feel connected to the women that take care of them, like their nannies and things like that. So that you have these other mother figures and so if you have a lot of people just taking care of you, but you never break away and you're dependent on that other person, and you never become basically aware of your own power, you can be tethered to it. It's like it's like almost like an addiction to.
Yeah. So let's go back to the archetype, because that's kind of where we start to get a sense of what's going on there. So you have this very powerful archetype that's activated, like you say, with your mother, with your physical mother, because she's taking care of you and nurturing you. So you're projecting this immense power onto her. And you experience it as she's magical, basically. She has the power to give life, but she also has the power to take it away. In other words, you're not only in awe of her, but you're also afraid of her, right? Because if she removes her love, if she removes her blessings, you will be crushed emotionally and physically. You will not survive. And
even Freud, which in the pleasure principle, he said that the mother, he called it the joyful return, is that with the mother would, feed the baby, sleep. And then when the mother, you ever notice a kid when the mother comes back, they're passing the baby around, all of a sudden, then it gets to the mother and it's like, Mom. And there's a kind of a connection there, and that anticipation of that return to the mother. And
Yes.
so it is kind of she moves away and then she comes back, and there's that waiting for her to return again.
That's right. So now the breaking away from that, right? The being able to overcome that.
It's almost like an addiction that you're breaking away from, in a way, psychologically.
Well, it's a dependence.
Yeah, dependency.
I mean, because you are physically, psychologically, emotionally dependent on the mother as a child. So now your task is, can you be brave enough? Can you be strong enough to break away from that spell, right? From whether it be positive or negative, and it's usually both. Can you be strong enough to break away from that Jung calls it the numinous power, which is kind of a mystical religious aspect of that projection that you have of the mother. In many mythologies, he says the dragon, which the hero slays, is that connection with the mother. You have to be able to overcome that terrible power of the mother in order to become yourself.
And we need that power early on because we need to survive. So it's the natural. But then there's an evolution where we have to break away. And the women have to do the same thing. It's not just the men, but women have to.
Well, so we would need a lot of help. So if you think of, you mentioned the rituals. That was the culture helping the individual with that task, because the culture understood intuitively, this is a difficult task. This is not easy. We got to
like take you in the middle of the night and stick you in a cave where you can't find her to break that bond.
That's right.
Well, it's not breaking the bond. It's actually just changing the dynamics of that bond to you're becoming a grown-up, an adult. And so it becomes a different connection. The adult son with the mother versus the child son with the mother.
Well, the child has to die. The old person has to die. And in many of the rituals, it was a symbolic death and rebirth, that you had to undergo the death of the old child. And often they did not give you your name until you underwent that transformation.
So is that why little boys or eternal boys, this archetype, or people that are possessed by this, they don't want to let go of their childhood. They do childish things. They want to be, playing games. And, it's like a lot of them are kind of like hang out with the boys and drink beer, all day, and want to do silly, stupid, reckless things. And
so let's go back to the myth then. Because, okay, if you have this very difficult task that requires an almost Herculean effort, and the culture is not there to help you, now you have a mother who is perhaps neurotic and is really not willing to let you go. The child, the child gets trapped. Not only there's no external help and assistance in helping them do their transformation, but the mother is essentially devouring them. That's what Jung called the devouring mother, where the mother wants to keep her claws in the child and is using the child as a substitute, perhaps, for the absent father. The absent husband.
So would that be the reason why a lot of, you hear people, men get spooked when a woman asks for the men to be more responsible, to, kind of put boundaries on the men, and then they run away. They feel like the woman is trying to control them. Is that type of person is trying to get away from the mother, and then they get into a relationship and they're recreating that same kind of the woman may not be devouring. She just may be like, hey dude, like you said you were going to call me and we're going to go out Saturday and you didn't show up. And the guy internalizes it as she's devouring me already. She's trying to control my life. And so that's what we're dealing with. So a lot of those, dating tips that tell you don't do this and don't do that, for a normal adult man would react differently than someone internally who has that conflict within themselves of they want the nurturing of the mother, but they also fear it at the same time.
Absolutely.
And so they're kind of, they're dependent on it, but then they hate it at the same time. So it's kind of like they can't really break free.
Yeah, they would not be able to form really strong bonds in a relationship with a woman, primarily because they don't feel confident enough in themselves to be able to receive that kind of love from the woman. Because love, essentially, what it's asking you to do is to transcend your ego. And in other words, it's asking you to grow up. And that's exactly what they're running from. And that's exactly what they haven't been able to do. So the demands of a relationship are going to trigger them into withdrawal, into running back into that irresponsibility of, I can't do that. I want to be free. I want to be a poet or a rock star or, something that takes them away. They
have their little artist, they're like artists that just, they're not really doing anything with it, but like they're those guys that are the music guys that, I'm going to be famous one day and I'm going to work on my music in the basement of my mother's house. And one day I'm going to be able to do this. And you're just kind of like not willing to take an adult job and kind of feel like that, kind of almost in a fantasy of something, I'm going to be like a little like a teenager, basically.
Pretty much so. Now, keep in mind, we all go through these adolescent stages. And so we all have those kind of tendencies in those periods. So don't think about everyone kind of being this eternal boy.
Every day you go and go, I think, what's your relationship like with your mother? Yeah. And a lot of it is, and most of it's unconscious. It's these men don't realize that it's happening. They think it's normal to, kind of assume things about the women they date, and they're looking maybe who they're attracted to and they're, who they have sexual chemistry with, but they're not realizing that dynamic is happening unconsciously. And so so we talk about a lot of the, in our courses, especially our new course, the Creative Love course, we talk about the 4 archetypes that women embody as their primary persona, what they kind of take on. And there's the mother, wife, the lover, the professional, and the mystic. And so when I think about this, I think about, well, the mother type would want to take care of this Puer Aeternus, the eternal boy, emotionally. The professional tends to get in relationships with this eternal boy as she takes care of him financially. The lover is definitely the type that just enjoys the lack of responsibility, and
or it might get triggered by him too.
Get triggered by it. But I think a lot of times I see 2 people that don't want to commit, and they're kind of playing and they're partying all, let's go to Mexico and drink margaritas all day. And they both are kind of playing, helping each other, like enabling each other in their immaturity, never wanting to grow up. And then the mystic wants to awaken, like fix the guy with spiritual, I'm going to, like, for me, I was always, I think, I wanted to help a guy, like, read my spiritual books and let me show you how you can change yourself and, help them reach enlightenment and, read Carl Jung or something. And so there's all, depending on the woman, she'll interact with the eternal boy in a different way, depending on your persona. Absolutely. So if you think about who you're, what type you are, that's basically what shows up for you. Now, I think a lot of times too, a lot of women think they can fix the man. Like, he's my project. I'm going to get him to grow up. I'm going to help him get a job. I'm going to, like they kind of, and that would be more the mother, right? Or, kind of trying to get him, like, to take care of him. And
well, there is something to that. I mean, because love is asking us to grow up in a sense, to mature, to break away from our childhood and create a new relationship. Some people do use it to individuate, to grow up, and you see it all the time
so it can be
where our relationship, comes into a person's lives and it changes them. They step into that higher, kind of way of being.
I think women have a capacity
absolutely
to wake up a man's soul.
Like I said, women, for men, you guys are angels.
Mm-hmm.
You are the divinity for us because you represent the soul, the power of that intuitive, emotional, the unconscious life, and you can bring that out in a man. But there are men, of course, that they
have to be willing.
Yeah, or they're just not capable of doing it, right? They just don't have the resources to do it at that
they need a coach. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
And sometimes they need to be an eternal boy for 10 more years before they're ready to transform.
And I've seen some people just go through most of their life and still not being able to do it. It does require kind of a lot of elements to come together. Like you say, the individual has to be willing. They have to be at least a little bit conscious to where they say, okay, I know I'm not stepping up to the responsibilities, and I need to consciously make that choice. And then the assistance from the external has to be there.
And so I also think another element, which you didn't mention, is that the woman needs to check in with herself as to, why am I attracting this pattern? Why am I so attracted to this person and what is it about me? So it could be maybe like they have to work with their persona and their shadow about why they need to support someone, the feeling of someone can only love me if I give them something, like the mother, or financially or emotionally. I think a lot of times too, over the years, I've worked with so many women, and one of the biggest fears they have is to have an adult man. They want one, but there's kind of a fear because they've gotten so independent and successful, and they don't want a man to come in and basically who has that power to take over their life. So we have to, as women, come into terms with our own power and know that a man is only going to mirror the power. They can never overpower you unless you allow them to, or you project that onto them. So a woman needs to do her own shadow work as to why she has this situation. But I definitely think the eternal boy is a safe place for a lot of women because they're not it's no threat to they get to kind of be the power. They actually can feed off the power that the eternal boy is projecting onto them. Of, you can save me. And a lot of women will tell me that, they feel like they're their mother, the mother of the man. Yeah. They're the responsible one, and he's not. And how do I get him to be responsible with his money, with his time, with his, the kind of men that don't have like a direction in life or vision, and kind of don't know their purpose. They're kind of lost. And they feel like I'm going to come save them. And I think a lot of women that do personal development, we're so wise and we know so much about ourselves. We're so self-aware that I think in a way we may be more targeted to someone like that because we are so knowledgeable. And I used to feel that every time I said to my friend once, I want a man that I don't have to feel like I have to teach anymore. Like I felt like I was always teaching them, handing them books, and read this book from Wayne Dyer, and understand yourself. And have you heard about Deepak Chopra or Marianne Williams? All this kind of trying to help them along on their journey. And it was almost in a way, it was a superior role that I took. And I have to admit, I've dated the man child before, and it was for me a fear of having someone on my level would be too intimidating. Like I felt like they would take over my life. And it was a way for me to not get too intimate with someone. It was kind of a block of my heart to really let someone in.
Yeah.
And that changed, obviously. I outgrew that man child. How about you? Like when you were younger, what really shifted for you was...
Well, it is a struggle, especially these days. Like I say, the culture kind of encourages people not to grow up, to remain in that adolescent stage. And so you really have to find your mentors, find people that you can look up to and say, I want to be like that. And there was certainly men in my life who I admired, and I thought, yeah, that's the way to do it. And my grandfather was certainly one of those people. He was very responsible, very stable, kind of, willing to take on the world for his family and all that. And at least they're our ideal. We know, well, I can never really fill his shoes, but I can try, right? I can move towards that. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of role models for men these days. And I had to do it in pieces, almost like, I had to strike out on my own, try different things.
Because your father was like the eternal boy, wasn't he?
Pretty much, yeah. And you're able to do it because instinctively we have that drive. We want to become ourselves. It's what we're here for. It's our kind of our nature to do it. What holds us back again is that fear, or that we're too afraid, we're too tied to the past. And of course, higher knowledge helped me a lot. The Gita came in very early into my life. Jung came in very early into my life. So I knew about these things already. I did not know exactly how to do them, but I knew the concepts. That there was these energies in us that were helping us individuate.
Yeah, it's an amazing process, and I always say, whatever's showing up for you is showing you something, and we instinctively know that something's off. We think even when we fall for someone romantically, we have that chemistry. There's a little voice in our head that's like, are you sure you want to go here? I don't know. And it's that kind of why that every person that comes in is really showing you something about yourself. And if a woman is aware, and the man comes into her life, that's the eternal boy, there is a possibility for her to ignite his own process.
For both to grow. And really, that's what an ideal relationship does. It allows both people to transform. I
love that, because I think a lot of people think, I got to do all my work, and then when I'm perfect enough, I'll find someone. But I feel like I've grown. I mean, we've been together almost 15 years. I've grown so much since we've met. So I was definitely not like all perfect and aware and awake. I mean, it's every year I just keep growing, and we support each other in that. I think that's really important. There's this kind of idea that I learned early on in self-help is like, clear all your blocks, and then your ideal person will show up, and then everything's easy. But it's just the beginning when you meet someone. It's just the beginning of another journey. But you have to be willing to take that journey. You have to be willing to say, I want to know deeper parts of myself. And that's what you're really doing in romantic love. You're inviting that deeper part. Now, for the eternal boy, what would be his barrier to the relationship? Why? Because he's still dependent on the mother, or psychologically kind of have a conflict, because I love her, but I also fear her.
Yeah, I've learned this from working as a therapist for many years. It boils down to this. If the individual is flexible in their emotional life, in their psychological attitude towards life, that is, they're open enough to learn something new, open enough to say, okay, I might not have this right. I might need to figure this out somehow, right? There's a flexibility there.
An openness.
And a little bit of openness at least. Then there's a pretty good chance of growth. When the person gets very rigid, they kind of find a way to react, to respond to life, and they're not willing to let that go, right? They insist that
it's a black and white more.
Yeah, that people hurt me and goddamn them, and I'm gonna get,
I hate my mother.
Yes.
My mother's the only one that loved me. Women suck.
That rigidity keeps people stuck. It does not allow for growth, for transformation, because they've kind of learned that this works for me and I'm not going to give that up.
It's like having a curiosity about yourself, being curious instead of assuming that you know it all. It's like that flexibility, and the rigidness of I know it all is really, for me, I got to that point sometimes after I did a lot of personal growth, because I just didn't want to open up any more stuff. Like I felt like I'm tired. They kept saying I had to fix myself. And after a while I was like, I know it all. Okay, I'm ready. I want to open up anything else. And I think sometimes people feel that way, so we have to constantly be curious and be willing to keep looking at ourselves, not as this broken person that needs to keep repairing itself, but a person that's growing and that's constantly evolving.
Yeah. It's
that evolution. I just read something today in one of the young groups that Jung said that growth is not a linear process. And when he found out that it was I can't think of the word, but he said it's like this circular process that you're kind of constantly kind of returning back to some things. And that's really true evolution. That he said it gave him such relief, because there's no like, okay, I finished these tasks and now I'm finished. It's always growing. So I know when we have difficult times, or we have a difficult relationship, or a relationship doesn't work out, or a fight with our partner, we think, oh, I'm not grown yet. I'm still broken. I got to keep working on myself. It's like, no, you invite it in with a curiosity of something else is going to take me to the next level. We're always going to the next level. And if you feel like you've done it all and there's no other level you want to go to, that's that rigid type of idea. We always should be curious. I mean, it's the most amazing journey to go inward and figure out who we are.
That's right. And it's that openness gives us then opportunities.
Yes.
Those stumbling blocks, right? The things that trip us up become now opportunities for growth.
And I have to always keep watch of my mind, because sometimes I'll be like, darn it, I knew that already about myself. And I get frustrated sometimes, because I'm like, oh, I kind of knew better there. Why did I let myself do that? And then I have to be gentle with myself and say, well, why did this keep coming up? Why am I hanging on to this old pattern still? And instead of in a harsh way, be more loving and gentle to ourselves as we keep growing. You never have that though. You're gentle with yourself. So the key is to become an adult ourselves. And I think the last piece is that we tend to have the eternal boy or the eternal girl when we don't become the woman that we need to be. And we're still hanging on to our childhood in a way, but not in a, I want to play, but more things that happened to me in my childhood. I just want to hang on to, and I just can't let it go. Yeah. And I want to keep processing and processing and processing. And in individuation, we see that there's another element of us, the unlived self, that becomes awake. And when we start to become her, the woman, she's different from the child. And like you said, it's almost like you have to let go, let the child die in a way, but it's transformed. It's no longer stuck in the past. And I think a lot of women and men still hang on to the past. And I need to, their story is still, this happened to me when I was 7. And that's how they define themselves still. Yeah. And it's not that you want to forget that and say it didn't happen, or it's not important that it happened. But it's like, if you keep going there, you're kind of not allowing yourself to take the next step. You're hanging, like you're tethered down to the past still.
Very much so. Yeah.
So it's time to grow up, time to step into the power that we are and become the eternal divine adult.
Instead of the eternal boy.
Yes, yes. So great conversation. So let's go to some questions. Most of my dating experience was with someone who just turned to alcohol anytime he was emotionally triggered. I don't drink, so I ended up feeling really abandoned when anything got deep. I would keep going deeper and deeper into what was coming up, and he would run away with the alcohol and then come back when the intensity passed. So it ended up feeling like we weren't just in anything together.
Yeah, that's the tricky part with any kind of drug that humans use to kind of soothe the emotions, is that they don't really allow you then to learn from that emotional experience, because you found a way out, essentially. It's an easy way out.
Right? Yeah. You're numbing it.
You're self-medicating, you're numbing it, you're escaping it. And I've seen a lot of people that use marijuana that way. They're stunting their emotional growth because they're not really processing the emotions. They're
you had
out.
said that, like, if you drink alcohol or have marijuana, that same kind of thing every day, you're basically, your maturity, your brain doesn't function as an adult. I dated someone who said he's a man child still. He smoked pot every day since he was 12, every day of his life. And I was like, why is he so immature? Like, why is he doesn't want to grow up? And it was that he was 40 and still, like, you know, still playing, you know, like not wanting to be an adult. And that is that, and you had mentioned that, and I was like, oh, that's why. So their mind isn't even maturing. And
they're, especially the emotional life, their intellectual life might be maturing. They're learning stuff, or they might be going to college and working and all this, but their emotional life, because they're not really processing the emotions and learning how to deal with them and work with them.
And you feel kind of like they're not going to be, as a woman, they're not going to be able to take care of you. They're not going to be a good provider. Like, you kind of have that sense, like, I got to take care of this person. They're not going to, be my equal support. And so we tend to notice that as women, is like, you kind of know, you don't feel like you can depend on them. And we don't want to be codependent, but we kind of want to be equal. We want to be able to rely on our partner when we need them, and they need to rely on us. And it should be a balance, not a completely super independent, and the guy has to do everything on his own and you have to do everything on your own. It's a I don't know. Codependent sounds so like that.
Yeah, I don't like that word either.
But it's more mutually sharing or something. I don't know.
Well, it's a complementary relationship.
Yeah, you
complement each other and emotionally and psychologically, instead of kind of, you take care of your stuff and I'll take care of my stuff. It's that give and take. I mean, it's so simple, really. A good relationship is one where you're able to give and receive love. So just check in with that. Are you able to give, and is your love accepted? And are you able to receive their love and accept that? That's a healthy, growing relationship.
And it comes in many forms. And it's just that kind of both people are putting their hearts on the line for the relationship, and not just one is carrying everything. And the other person isn't a complete container for everything, all of your needs you're not a container for all their needs. Like the mother was for us as a child, they became the container for all our needs. But very powerful. Any other questions before we go? We had a lot of classes this week. People are catching up. We had our love classes. And so if you are interested in learning, we have a 3-video series that we did in our sister group, Creative Love Coaching. If you're interested, join that group and check them out. The videos are only going to be up for another week, and they're coming down. So, yeah,
growth,
I think that's
somebody said growth is a spiral.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, I've always thought of it this way, that it's an upward moving spiral. We come around to the same things, but in each coming around, we're at a higher point in our development.
But we dip down a little bit to kind of go to the next level. It's like we have to dip a little.
Yeah. And a lot of people mistake that coming around to the same things as, didn't I work through this before?
Mm-hmm. Like I'm still stuck.
Right. But remember, you're approaching it now from a higher vantage point. Mm-hmm. You're seeing things clear, hopefully, right? If you're moving upward.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're moving downward, then
you feel like you're sliding the wrong way.
You're regressing, basically. Yeah. You're depending now on the old psychological defense mechanisms to deal with life.
And I think it's really important to know that when we grow, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to ask someone to open their heart to you and you open their heart to them. It's a very uncomfortable thing. Thank God we have that chemistry and that romantic power that forces us upon us. Because I think if we didn't have that, we would never get together. We'd just be so afraid of each other. But we have this other force, that infatuation that kind of drives us to people. And that is dictated unconsciously. So whatever is in our unconscious, we're going to have that chemistry and that passion for someone who is actually exactly what we need for our growth. So when you do follow that, you are reflecting, you're seeing where you're at.
And another principle that we all can follow is if you do your own work, your own internal work, the better you will relate to others in a better way, and you will attract people that are also on that same trajectory.
And there's nothing wrong with you. This is more about becoming more aware so that you can make conscious choices in relationships versus feel like you're stuck in a dynamic that you didn't choose. And I've been there thinking I just have to find the right person. If I could just find the right person, and then it'll all work out. And I would always say at the end of the relationship, why does this keep happening to me? Why does this keep happening? And it's because I was creating the pattern. I couldn't wake up. And so that curiosity, be curious when things are kind of out of line or you have a heartbreak. It's this curiosity of like, why did this occur in the first place? Why do I feel these things? And that openness to willingness to look in and go deeper into the pain or hurt that we're feeling so we can retrieve the gold that's there. There's something in there that's showing us something about ourselves. So great questions. And thank you for joining us for our Soul Saturday.
We'll see you next Saturday.
And we'll see you next Saturday. And if there's a topic that you would love for us to cover, please let us know. And we hope to see us on our podcast as well. We post these audios on our podcast. So if you want to play them while you're jogging or working out or doing your social distancing, we'll be in your ears and ready to hear. Take care, everyone.
Take care. See you soon.
Bye-bye.